Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Gumpert, editor of MSDynamicsWorld.com. This time, it is 2 weeks in review. We'll look at some interesting product news, some of it from last week's Summit EMEA 2017. Among those and other stories, the state of Dynamics 365 ERP solutions, Microsoft putting AX 2012 R3 out into maintenance mode, and Nav Tenerife. In other news, we have a look at the Dynamics answer to helping the marijuana business go legit, and a little bit more. Joining me to chat about the week in the news is Dan Mono, assistant editor. Hey, Dan, what do we have first?
Well, you tell me. You were at Summit EMEA 2017, where there was an awful lot of Dynamics product news. And first off, we have Microsoft aiming for Dynamics 365 Financials Western Europe launch, but the timing is unclear.
Yeah, so I would say this was the story that really stuck out to me at the event. The SMB ERP strategy in the Dynamics 365 space is the one that's, I think, the most uncertain right now. I had a chance to speak with Gordon McDonald, Microsoft Product Marketing Director for Dynamics 365 for the SMB space. And, that was after Microsoft gave a couple of briefings to attendees about the Nav roadmap and about the 365 financials product and sort of how it lines up with Nav. My feeling was that those sessions at the event actually created quite a bit of confusion. And as a result, Gordon was actually kind enough to actually sit down with me and do an interview, which I documented in this piece. The story is that, there's a couple of elements to it, so it's a little bit not complicated, but there's a lot of elements to it. So they're going for Nav and 365 financials will be on the same code base. They'll be aiming for functional equivalence. It doesn't mean they'll be the same product, though. So Nav might look different. And Nav will also it looks like it will sort of follow 365 financials. It will, probably stay on an annual update basis or an annual update cadence, and 365 financials will be doing sort of monthly or maybe quarterly updates, much more rapid than Nav. They'll be using the same interface, but they're taking a different approach. They're trying to get a whole lot of things updated to make 365 financials sort of a acceptable cloud product. That means, with being web-based and I guess not trying to shoehorn in what is actually a rather legacy product in Nav with a lot of code that hasn't been, changed in a long time. As one person told me, all the focus with Nav in recent years has been all about the stack, getting three-tier architecture, getting a web interface, getting reporting updated, all these things that aren't really related to the ERP functionality itself, the financial management, the inventory management, the other supply chain elements or capabilities. It's all been about the stack. And now that they have that, they've got to go back and they've got to make some of these capabilities sort of work freestanding on their own in front of a user in a web interface that they haven't had to do necessarily. So they're doing a lot of work right now on getting some of those capabilities ready for the European market, presumably for the North American market too, since that's already available. But I think that's the big unknown is when will these features be ready to unveil? And I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure at Microsoft right now to get that out in a timely way, meaning, I would say by, September, October, maybe November, but certainly by the end of 2027 to have something very significant to show for all the effort they're putting into this. And pressure's on there. Microsoft was not ready to start committing to delivery dates of any sort really at this event in EMEA, which I think lended itself to a little bit of uncertainty since there certainly seemed to be a lot they couldn't say. And the takeaway I guess I have is that it will be a major achievement if they're able to push out some significant financials releases to North America, to Western European countries with localization and with new features by the end of 2017. I think that's really the goal, if I could put it that way. But it's a high pressure situation right now. That's I think my takeaway at Microsoft.
Wow, sure. Next up, this also unrolled at Summit EMEA 2017. Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Operations Roadmap. Next release is due July 2017.
Yeah, so my high-level takeaway again from this event was, if the SMB side of things, but we didn't even talk about sales and marketing for the SMB 365 stuff. But if the SMB side of things is sort of a little more uncertain in terms of timing and possibilities of success, I would say the enterprise side, which is the 365 for Operations, AX7, and the full-scale CRM online or 365, customer experience apps. That side's a lot more settled and sort of on a lot stronger footing. We know that they've got 100 live customers on the 365 for operations. They say they've got at least 400 more sort of active projects working toward a production solution, launching a production solution of the same product, which I think is pretty strong. If they can continue to sort of push those projects ahead, that would be a really impressive achievement this year if a majority of those went live as well. And now that they've enabled upgrades from 2009 and 2012, we'll talk about this more in a bit, but the fact that they are now giving existing AX users a path forward that lets them choose between on-premise and the cloud is really, so I think, that final piece of the puzzle that, and it's funny, I mean, there was some CIOs at this event in Amsterdam who hadn't heard yet that they had the on-premise plans, which was announced about a month ago, right? They were going to introduce local business data, right? So these CIOs showed up at the event not knowing this, last week, still complaining that they didn't have an on-premise option for the future, still saying we'll just stay on AX 2012 and then we'll move to something like SAP, who gives us on-premise options. They got there, they found out what they'd been missing, and I think they kind of did a lot of them kind of did a 180, like, okay, well, now we can talk again. We can, consider this as a future upgrade or migration for ourselves from 2009 or from 2012. And I guess I'm not surprised by that, but that was pretty much what people expected until, especially these existing customers, until they had that. They weren't going to even consider AX7. And so that was a big announcement for Microsoft to bring out there. And it made a lot of people happy, especially in Europe, where I think there was maybe even more resistance than anywhere else in the world regarding not having a choice about whether they were going to move to Azure or not. So certainly a big sort of announcement, and everyone kind of give each other high fives, I think, that they had this to announce. And then Microsoft also had some updates on how they'll actually upgrade people from 2009 to 2012. What else? I think there were some sort of, you might call smaller scale updates as well. They announced new mobile capabilities that are coming in the July timeframe. Yeah, and just the idea of, well, another one that's maybe going to become another topic of debate, I think, is going to be this idea of how they're going to update software in this cloud model. Everyone's going to be on Lifecycle Services, which is Azure-based, even if you're running on-premise. And there's this notion that you will have to sort of stay up to date to some degree in some amount of time on AX updates in the future. So I think that's an area where we're definitely going to want to watch to see how people plan for that and how well they accept it. If you're on cloud, you're going to still have flexibility on that, but I think there is their expectation that the companies will have to sort of be more up to date than they are today, where they could sit on an old version for years and years without changing.
Yeah.
So that's the enterprise ERP story. They're calling it the Spring 2017 release, although it's slated for July. So that's maybe one other thing just to take note of. I mean, I don't know if that's perhaps that name suggests that they sort of got a little delayed in getting this one out the door. And I can imagine, a ton of reasons why that could have possibly happened. But that was one other thing. It does seem it's a couple months late. Maybe they were maybe aiming for May and they ended up in July. It's not a huge deal, I think, especially in the ERP world. People aren't dying to, usually for a 2-month wait for a new major release. But that was there too.
That's not the worst delay I ever heard of.
Right.
I'm a little aghast at nobody'd heard over in Europe about the on-premise option coming. I mean,
I don't know about nobody. I mean, I know partners had heard about it. I think these were kind of customer CIOs I was being told about that hadn't seen the news yet.
That sounds like the old days when you found out the king was dead 4 months later, right?
Yeah, something like that. People on our site certainly knew because we covered it, and it got a lot of reads. I mean, people were paying attention, among our readers. So I know some people took note of it, and it was all over Twitter, and partners were writing about it too. So it was not totally missed, but I think a lot of these CIOs have their heads down on other stuff. But it's I guess one other thing that sort of struck me, just in terms of AX customers and who they are. I mean, when you talk about Convergence in the past, or Envision, or even the user group events, I mean, these are companies that are spending millions of dollars a year on AX, for example. I mean, you could, as one partner was telling me, you could easily be spending $6 million a year on licenses right now, and then another $1 million on software assurance or BREP to sort of keep your support going and your access to code updates and all that sort of stuff. So these are people who are coming to these events who are dropping huge amounts of money by any other standard on this software as a key part of their business. I mean, and it's easy to sort of lose track of that, I think, when you sort of just sit in these sessions if you're not the customer. But yeah, these are major investments that people are trying to these. If you're an IT manager or CIO that you're trying to balance here.
So there were a couple of other stories from there as well.
Yeah.
About activities, I believe is the first one.
Yeah. So that's, I don't have a ton to really report on this one. They did acknowledge they're going to have a new sort of mid-range license user level called activity user level or activities. They didn't really put out anything in writing on this. They spoke to it a little bit. The basic case there is that there's, sort of the full all access user in Dynamics 365, and then there's the team member, which is very, very limited, just read only. And what they're finding from customers who are already going live on it, or who I guess are considering it, is that they need something in between. They need something for users who, do one thing all day in the system, but they're really just very limited. So I think the example they use is like a warehouse worker who has just a couple of screens they might use where they're inputting data and they're doing things, but just in a very limited range. And the, $190 a month price tag is just not sensible and not fair for what those people are getting out of the system. So I think Microsoft heard that, and they're going to roll this out. It seemed to be well received. People feel it's a reasonable accommodation for Microsoft to make, and they just they acknowledge just they're making adjustments as they go to try to respond to the actual way their customers are using it. And so I don't think anyone was mad about it. I think they were just glad to see Microsoft sort of adjusting as they go to sort of better suit their customers' needs. That's how it was sort of positioned.
Sure. Next up, we had Microsoft prepares to end new licensing deals for Dynamics AX 2012 R3, which I take it was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, sort of the timing of it was maybe a surprise. And I got a hint of this. Someone actually left a comment on one of the articles I wrote, just mentioning it. And then a partner actually sort of expanded on it with what looked to me like guidance that Microsoft had sent to the partners, with a list of sort of the rules and the guidance on how this was going to work. Microsoft I hadn't seen any blog posts at the time we posted this, anything from Microsoft publicly about this. So my guess is they're just communicating it to partners right now. Again, it's not a surprise, but as we mentioned before, the fact that they have these upgrade paths now for 2009 and 2012 also means that they can now say, all right, no more sales of those products no more new sales of those products. Doesn't mean they disappear. Doesn't mean people are being forced off of it. It just means that they don't want partners selling it anymore, which is understandable. But I think as the person who commented on our site mentioned, it also sort of adds a little pressure to partners who have IP that they need to get upgraded, or any other work that they need to do to be able to sort of fully transition to the new model. There's more to it than code. That's maybe a conversation for another day. But yeah, if you're going to be selling all D365 operations, your business is going to start to change, I guess is how I would put it.
Yeah. And there comes a point at which you got to just get with the real world. I mean, you remember in Windows. Boy, I love Windows XP. Why did you change Windows XP? My organization is staying on XP. Well, it just may not be realistic after a certain point. So. Yeah, and the other thing that one reader picked up on was the upgrade story. When you're in operations now, the goal with upgrading a customer's D365 operations system, it's still AX, but the plan is, they've done some re-architecting, which I'm sure I couldn't accurately describe right now, but where they've sort of really locked down different parts of the architecture of AX. So you can't just build in customizations as freely as you could before, which is restrictive for customization, but I think the hope is it'll make the system much more stable. And that way, when you go to upgrade, it'll be a much lower likelihood that you'll break anything. And the end result then is that they hope, or the vision is, the customers will be able to run their own upgrades within the operations platform, spending just a week or 2 weeks of time. It sounds great for customers, but the thing that I think that's going to set off alarm bells with partners, because there was a lot of services revenue in those upgrades in the past. And if you're planning your business for the next year or 3 years as an AX reseller, and you have to cut that component of your potential hourly billing out of it, that could have a major impact on some people. So that's certainly something to watch there. And finally, in this sort of cluster, Microsoft to customers, cloud continues to transform Dynamics 365. This is a report from you, Jason, about Microsoft Dynamics CTO Mike Ehrenberg's talk at Summit EMEA.
Yeah, and we're kind of working backwards a little here, because this was based on basically what Mike Ehrenberg talked about in a keynote to kick off the event. As sort of a not a Microsoft event, it's definitely has a different feel to it, a different attempt at messaging than you would see at an old Convergence event where Microsoft kind of owned the whole experience. But this was Ehrenberg's chance to get up there and really show off how well the Dynamics team is sort of aligning with Microsoft's bigger vision. And it's not new. I mean, they've always done that to an extent. I just think it really hit well in terms of a lot of the high level points that he was making and a lot of the guidance he was providing on some of the really common or central, technology that the Dynamics customer base is going to have to be, using and aware of, and maybe not this year, maybe not 2018, but definitely in the future. Things that will be part of the future of the product. Common data service, as we talked about in other recent weeks, is obviously core, and just looking down the list here, Power BI and Azure technology in general is obviously going to be core. So we talked a lot about regulatory compliance in Europe, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, which I think is really key for anyone doing business in Europe in terms of privacy and control over data about individuals and how well Microsoft's going to comply with that. So overall, I took from that the message was the Dynamics team is well aligned with Azure and other teams at Microsoft, and they're all sort of thinking about the needs of the European audience. This was a Europe Central event. Obviously, it did pull in Middle East and Africa as well.
Next up is sort of a cluster of news and notes from Summit EMEA: naming bugs, CRM forms, budgeting tools, GP migration, Nav Tenerife, and Ideas site.
Yeah, I don't want to go through each of these because I just felt like I had this sort of cluster of sort of interesting things at the end of that event that I wanted to just get down. So that's all this piece is. I think for anyone interested in AX, I thought it was very interesting that Senior Director of Product Marketing for Operations, Case Hertog, actually told the audience of AXOG members or attendees that operations that and we've talked about this on the podcast before, right? That sort of they landed on operations almost, I don't know, by chance or without a lot of planning, and that it does have some weaknesses as a brand name. He called it a naming bug. I don't know what that means exactly, if someone got a bug in the way they made the decision or what, but I think he said it's going to change. So I actually put a poll up this week, and we've got a few responses asking sort of what should it be. I had a little trouble kind of designing that poll question because I could think of a few possible sort of naming, options. But and I'm looking at the poll results right now. We have 40 votes, which is not bad for one of our little informal polls. And Dynamics 365 AX is what our readers seem to prefer mostly. We've had some other interesting suggestions. Someone suggested like AX 2017, and some people like Dynamics 365 Enterprise as the name, and some people have better ideas. So I'll keep an eye on that one. That'll be open for a few more days.
Interesting.
What would you choose?
I like D365AX. I mean, they've gone this far with D365. They almost have to stick with it, and adding AX to it just clears any confusion. The other thing too is we use in our writing D365, but that's not something I've ever seen in print from Microsoft. How about they start calling it that? We call it that. Yeah. Everybody else does. Yeah.
I would guess they won't do that. I'm just guessing that because they have Office 365. I don't think I hear them call it O365. So Office 365 Dynamics. I think they'll keep the Dynamics, but I would not be surprised if it went back to AX. It's still a known name, so you got that whole investment and that whole sort of mind share, whatever you call that. People who recognize it or awareness of it. So, and it's still the same product. I mean, it's still, sort of one cohesive product, even though it's evolved architecturally. So yeah, that could be it.
Yeah.
If they came up with something completely new, I'd be surprised, I guess, if it wasn't some variation on that. Right?
Did anybody come up with anything weird? Because you remember over in the UK, they were trying to name some Arctic exploration vessel, and they asked the great British public.
Oh yeah,
who came up with Bodie McBoatface? They were hoping for something like Intrepid.
I didn't get. I'm just looking here through a couple of. So one person said AX 2016, I think they're a year behind, and another person said Enterprise Accounting for Dynamics 365. That was another person's vote. So Enterprise Accounting, I guess, would be another. It's an interesting idea, Enterprise Accounting. I think that might fall too far to the other side, operations, accounting. That's the trick, because it's a big product with all these modules that are hard to describe in one word. ERP kind of does it. AX does it just because it's a brand name.
Sure.
I don't know. We could sit around scratching our heads for the rest of the podcast on this one.
I'm curious. Well, this is a place you bets type of thing. And, well, hey, there's a revenue stream for us. Place you bets. Next up, we had 3 new user adoption tactics for Microsoft Dynamics 365 CRM apps.
Yeah, this one goes back a little further in our article timeline here. It really came out of my observations at the previous event I was at, which was Extreme 365 Lisbon, which I know we've talked about. But I just felt it was good to sort of, CRM has become such a massive product, and they keep expanding it. They keep adding capabilities and sort of tools to it. So this was just really my attempt to try to sort of make sense of like some of the tools that all sort of can accomplish similar ends by different means. And so I don't want to go too far into it, but there's some really compelling new ideas out there. But they're not it's not one size fits all. So like, for example, there's this idea of the app designer, but that's really an enterprise tool. It allows you to take a very complex, fully built out CRM online, enterprise scale solution and cut it down for different people's needs. So you can create these really nice little apps that allow different users or different groups of users to really just see the parts of it that they need. And it's great, but I think the caution on it is you really got to have a well-designed and fully built-out system before you can do this. Otherwise, you're building sort of something out of nothing. So that's really sort of an enterprise thing. And then there's the couple of products on the market now that basically strip down basic CRM without doing anything to it. You can just immediately turn it on in a very stripped down way, which is great for smaller firms, right? Because they don't have to do any configuration up front. They just run through these wizards, and what they're given after, they fill in specific information. They can provide sort of, exported data that they can from another system that they can upload into it to get started. They can apply some industry templates, and with no help or with just a little help from a consultant, they can be up and running with a system that's not too overwhelming. And so when I was in Lisbon, I did get a demo of one product, Jumpstart 365, from the team at Minds United. And obviously there's other products out there. I already had some knowledge of another one called Rapidstart CRM from that company's run by Steve Mordew, who's actually been on our podcast. So I think these kinds of products are really getting some good traction, and they should get more traction because they have a very compelling story to tell. They also have the potential, because they're really sort of changing the paradigm a little bit of how people deploy CRM. They're very, very interesting for the down market, as well as sort of the mid-market, larger organization who needs CRM. Trying to prevent failure, trying to prevent shelfware, trying to prevent lack of adoption, all those risks that people take on. And the third area in the article is use of Power Apps, I believe. Power Apps and Flow. And I really just referenced how those will impact CRM and some of the other comparable solutions that are sort of, and the Task Flow Designer, which is another very cool, but sort of hard to describe product that can actually build out sort of new, bespoke, little, very, very targeted tactical tools for people to use to make them more productive, getting data in and out of CRM. So that's sort of the third area there, these sort of custom and semi-custom apps. So this was, again, my attempt to sort of make sense of all these different things that are there that you might want to use, which one to use when.
Sure. Finally, in Dynamics product news, and on a kind of a lighter note, want to understand Dynamics GP community spirit? Check out Fabricam Day.
Yeah, boy, Fabricam Day took over Dynamics Twitter today. If you look this morning, the GP community's spirit was on display. A lot of very sort of happy, enthusiastic, spirited people who, and I can appreciate that. As a former demo jockey myself, and field consultant in another, not in GP, but with other enterprise software, having that demo data to sort of turn to is, it's sort of a psychological element to that. It's very comforting to know that you can count on it. It's super valuable when you're trying to make progress on different kinds of scenarios. So I could certainly appreciate that. And the GP veterans out there really went all out in celebration today. So they're doing a lot of remembering, and they're showing off sort of old sort of conference swag and old logos and old sort of GP memories. So I think it was just, and sort of it was a poignant time for that, because I have to say, the summit event I was just at, it wasn't about GP at all, because it's a European focused event, but there were some GP veterans there who do other things, who work with NAV and other solutions. And I think some of them are starting to feel like the message is fairly clear that GP is losing a little steam as a product with a sort of a bright future. It's certainly a product that isn't going away, and I've always said that, but it feels like it's waning a little bit. Maybe its best days are behind it in terms of its sort of its growth and sort of ability to make an impact on the world.
Well, one thing I've just in interviewing people over the last couple of years, you find that AX has disciples, GP has zealots. There is a kind of a fervor to them. Something else that struck me, just the picture that you showed in the article of, you were talking about the conference swag. Somewhere in there is a Great Plains box, an off-the-shelf Great Plains box software, which would have been on CDs, just like buying something at Best Buy in the old days. Yeah. There's I've been having, I don't know if it's just coincidence, but I've been having several different conversations with people recently, just sort of reminiscing about their old school sort of software memories, whether it's using Lotus 123 or, trips to Comdex and the competition between, Microsoft and other vendors, like Lotus, or writing, compiling things down to machine code or writing in COBOL. These I've been having a lot of these reminiscing kind of conversations recently when I've been at events, which is interesting, if it's related at all. Next up, we've got some interesting partner news and ISV solutions. First up, the NAV people releases D365 Cannabis, seed to sale for a new and complex industry. And this was a really fascinating interview with Jeff Keane, president of the Americas for the NAV people. And it turns out that, marijuana has always been a huge industry, but now it's a legitimate one. And that means it's got all the requirements of agriculture, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals with all the regulatory compliance, distribution, even brick and mortar retail. So the NAV people have crafted a solution that goes end to end with beginning with agroware for greenhouses. Agroware is a pretty much a greenhouse or a commercial farm solution. Then it's NAV for manufacturing and financials, and a bespoke point-of-sale solution for dispensaries. It turns out that just like in the old days with marijuana, you can't order weed over the net. You have to go see a guy, and you have to bring cash. Because only in Canada can you order over the net with a credit card. But something interesting, too, is that this is a NAV-based solution, but the NAV people have branded it D365, as we were kind of referring to earlier. They expect NAV to have the D365 moniker by year's end, fall into that family. Yeah. And as you pointed out in that earlier story, NAV and D365 financials have pretty much the same code base. So they're kind of, NAV people are kind of betting the weed farm on that. So it's an impressive story of seeing a sudden niche requirement just appear out of nowhere. I think legalization and medical use have pretty much burgeoned up in the last couple of years, and rising to it with an end-to-end solution.
I agree. I think a couple of things jumped out at me. One was that we already mentioned with the use of the term D365, and I think the fact that it's sort of I think it's a little unique. They're facing this business situation where it's sort of a green field, and there's almost no legacy there, right? I mean, you're going from guys with backpacks and and bikes to bicycles to actual storefronts and legitimate grow operations, and then just this crazy sort of regulatory situation. I mean, just the differences between states, and the fact that nothing can move between states, the fact that it all has to be totally replicated. It's not very scalable, at least in the U.S. And this sort of the fact that the federal government still doesn't even really acknowledge any of this. and that they're sort of working under just with a bit of hope that the new federal government doesn't, the Attorney General doesn't come down on them or anything else. But then in the future, maybe things will open up and they could go to more scalable operations. They could do payment processing. They could do e-commerce. All these things could still change in the future. So yeah, I think any of these businesses who are serious about having staying power is smart to have a system like this that can sort of evolve in the future, can add e-commerce, can do more sort of, distribution and logistical things, perhaps, down the road when they're able to sort of legally do those kinds of things too. I mean, just the fact that they're shipping, sending cash all over the place. I was actually surprised in your article that some states people can put money into banks now, which is good. I had read that was even a huge challenge. People were just sort of storing cash in these armored convoys of sort of ex-military people acting as security, driving around with huge amounts of cash because they didn't know what else to do.
Yeah. It seems like the large banks kind of treated it like a hot potato, Marijuana?
Yeah,
not it.
Too much risk.
Yeah. And what's interesting, too, is that almost everybody from the greenhouses to producers who make the products, turns out cookies, brownies, oil, even bath oil. I don't know who wants to smell like that, but
that's a great idea.
Yeah, smell like a bong water, but almost everybody's new, but not everybody. It turns out that, for example, one of the bigger greenhouses used to produce for Del Monte, and they've got a veteran, 20-year veteran greenhouse manager who just moved from fruit cup to cannabis.
to gummy gummy bears.
I forgot about those. Yeah, I guess those are real too. So the marijuana business was never dull, and it's not dull now.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the closest, and I've heard this sort of other places before, but, get big tobacco getting into this game. I've heard in the past that they were waiting in the wings. I haven't personally seen anything about that, but that's also probably one of the closest sort of agribusinesses where it sort of goes between the Food and Drug Administration aspect and the, sort of agricultural aspect to, of course, totally different regulations, but interesting to see if anything else sort of spins off from that side of it, because it is such a unique series of needs that they're trying to fill. So anyway, yeah, a very interesting story. I'm glad you got a chance to talk with them.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Read the Signs. When does a Dynamics GP to Dynamics 365 migration make sense? We're kind of just talking about this. Here we talk to Stone Ridge Software CEO Eric Newell, who says that it is the complexity, not the company size, that determines the need for a Dynamics GP to 365 migration. And interestingly, Newell is a GP veteran. He has started his career at Great Plains and moved on to work with some of the larger GP partners, and later spent 13 years at Microsoft, part of it, I believe, as product manager with GP. But as he's pointing out, while GP's limited functionality and distribution, warehouse, manufacturing are sufficient for the less complex organization, there is simply, if you're going multi-company, multi-site, multi-currency, there's a lot more capability in 365 for finance and operations. So once again, GP is well suited for lower complexity needs. And something else that he pointed out too is he described oohs and ahs with the ability to show users what they need to do next in Dynamics 365 with the wizards and those capabilities.
Task guides, that kind of thing.
Yeah, task guides. And to make a pretty complex operation pretty simple, pretty exciting for people who are unfamiliar with ERP to just be able to walk through it. And called it a great learning tool. And, of course, GP just doesn't have that wizard kind of functionality.
Yeah, I would just add that Eric and a couple of other members of the Stonehenge team then did a webcast on this topic, and they took a lot of questions. There was a good audience of GP customers, and they asked a lot of good questions about the product. One thing that I was very interested to know or to see was how many didn't really understand what the different Dynamics 365 products were. They were confused by the naming. They were confused by the split between the two distinct, the financials versus operations as products, what was included in them, did they work together? They answered a lot of those questions. It's very interesting to see where people are using it, where people are coming in as a starting point in considering this. And I have to conclude that there are some GP customers right now who are thinking about this seriously as a possibility that they are going to move to one of these Dynamics 365 solutions. I can't imagine many would even consider financials right now because it's just so green and so underdeveloped, I guess you would say. At this point, it'll certainly mature and gain more functionality. That was in my news and notes too. We didn't touch on it, but this idea of GP to 365 operations is something that might get build up some more momentum in the next year or two. I don't think there's any tools right now, but very likely folks like the team at Stone Ridge could build some or build up the methodologies around that. Microsoft could end up maybe building out some support tools for that kind of migration as well. I'm sure they'd love to have that. Was it 40,000 GP customers or more, having a good chunk of them move up the market. So yeah, very interesting topic, one we'll have to keep watching.
Yeah. Finally, in the partner and ISV news, Unit 4 acquires assistance software for a born-in-the-cloud professional services offering. Here, Unit 4, which is a provider of enterprise applications for professional service organizations, acquired Assistance software, and Assistance provides professional services automation solutions, and its Assistance PSA suite, which I take it has about 10% market share in that field, is now Unit 4 PSA suite. And Assistance brings with it numerous vertical-specific PSA solutions, among them PSA Suite for architects, PSA Suite for consultancy, PSA Suite for IT services, and so on, for accountancy, engineers, legal, marketing and advertising, and nonprofit. So this is one of those great merger and acquisition stories where you say, well, that fits well. That's going to be a powerful company. And these, by the way, are two Netherlands-based companies. So.
Yeah, I think the one thing that seems a little bit of not a mismatch, but a difference is that Assistance has such a strong presence in Dynamics. And Unit 4, other people could maybe tell me I'm wrong, but I don't hear about them being a competitor or being in the same types of companies that end up buying Dynamics solutions. And Assistance just has such a strong pedigree there. Obviously, they have a lot of very good IP as well that I'm sure Unit 4 was more interested in.
Next up are some compelling guest editorials and thought leadership pieces. The first three are from Don Riggs, who's not just an AX veteran, but he's kind of a channel provocateur. And first up, Don wrote for us why the Microsoft Dynamics AX community needs independent professionals. As he describes it, we all know about Microsoft partners, but why do we also want independence in the space, and what value do they offer? He also gave us, is in-memory BI technology a better reporting solution than traditional query-based? Here with faster execution and data snapshots on demand, not to mention a much smaller data structure, in-memory reporting, in Don's estimation, should become a standard. And third from Don, implementation, audit, and reconciliation, 5 risk factors and 7 audit steps. Here he talks about the warning signs of an off-the-rails ERP implementation and how an audit can get to the causes and chart a roadmap for successful completion. After that, we have how to bring your own data warehouse to Microsoft Dynamics 365 for operations. This is by Raul Mota of Real Dynamics, and he describes how if you have a data warehouse already, then you'll likely use it versus the out-of-box Dynamics 365 for operations offering. Then we have what if your organization still prefers a network file share? Consider the updated Azure File Services. This by Rob Curls of Concerto Cloud Services. And he describes why an update to Azure File Server enables users to securely connect to the shares from any location. And finally, we've got integration across Microsoft Dynamics 365 for operations, sales, and PSA. Building a Services Industry Solution. This is by Andy Yeomans, who is the U.S. Director of Business Development at SA Global. And as he describes, until Microsoft offers a fully integrated platform, development partners can fill the void and enable clients to realize their digital transformation goals with functionality that they need from all the flavors of Dynamics 365. So that's our stories for this past couple of weeks, and let's look at next week. Jason, what stories do you have coming up?
Well, I'm working on a couple of ideas. One is looking at sort of more interpretations of what it means to attack the challenge of digital transformation. So hope to be bringing you more on that. And also a little bit more, looking a little more behind the scenes of what some of the input from AX customers has meant on Microsoft's sort of roadmap planning for operations and what it meant to get user input to make how that drove the decision to accept the idea of a local on-premise deployment for 365 operations. A couple of ideas there.
Great. I will have an executive Q&A with Sana Commerce CEO Michelle Schipperus, and then One Click Factory will tell us, can complex nav installations move to the cloud, or must you strip down your nav installation first? One Click Factory argues that you can move to the cloud, but there are risks as well as rewards, and they'll walk us through those.
Well, it has been another busy episode of the MSDW Podcast. Thanks to everyone in the audience for hanging with us here. Thank you, Dan, for helping us put it together again this week.
Sure.
And if you'd like to be on the podcast, drop us a line, or if you have any comments. I'm Jason Gumpert. You can reach me by email at jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com.
And I'm Dan Morneau, Assistant Editor at D, M as in Matthew, AURN as in Nickel, O, at msdynamicsworld.com. Until
next time, we're MS Dynamics World signing off.
As long as you get on my side, there's a whole lot of walking to do. If we stay